Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. Join me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, for real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and masculine, you learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
Together, working at a practical level, you learn to trust that everything that is happening is for you, your growth, and ultimate freedom.
Our circumstances don't matter. It's only how we relate to them that does.
Get ready to befriend the wisdom of your body and the power of your mind.
Break Free and Trust starts now.
And welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jacqueline.
One of the first teachings that Jacqueline ever shared with me was that the most important decision you will ever make is your answer to a single question. Is the universe benevolent? Because however you answer it, that answer becomes the lens which you see your whole life through. Jacqueline and I have come to believe almost nothing shapes a person's perspective more than this one choice. Answer that it's hostile, and every hardship is proof that you're under attack. Answer that it's benevolent, and that very same hardship becomes something happening for you and not to you. An invitation rather than a punishment. Same life, completely different world. In this episode, we're going to explore and look at more deeply this idea. What do we actually mean by a benevolent universe? And is believing it just wishful thinking? If it's a benevolent universe, then what do we do with suffering, cruelty, and loss? And how do soul contracts, quantum physics, and the frequency of consciousness fit into any and all of this? All of this and more in the next hour. And it's a live show, so for live viewers, please put your questions in the chat or call in at 1-800-930-2819, and we'll take some questions in the second half. All right. You know what? Let's get rolling with where I started. So Jacqueline, this teaching you shared with me, and it's one of the first things I remember you ever saying in one of the classes I took of yours, of this idea about the benevolent universe and the most important question you have to ask. Can you take us back to that and what you meant by it, or what you mean by it?
Well, I can, but I'm curious about something because
Yeah.
I don't remember the day that I said it and that it landed so deeply for you. I'm wondering what hit you so hard in that statement when I spoke it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's this wasn't the very first time I met you when I was sort of going through my stuff. It was months later when I'd already started this, spiritual emergence, if you will. And I'd started studying some spiritual teachings and whatnot. But I just think it was the way it was phrased. I never thought about what that meant. I guess I'd never placed a direction or objective on the universe. I sort of thought as being something that was relatively inert. But when you asked that question, it really landed with me that actually I was feeling into that there is something a lot more to this, that there is something driving it in a direction. And it made me really deeply think about it and what that actually meant for my life. It really hit me.
Yeah, I wish I remember. It's not my statement. So I wish I remember where I heard it from originally. But I guess there's no new ideas out there anyways. Just recycled ones or shifts in perspective. I think, well, I can tell you what it means to me now. I don't know exactly what it meant to me when I spoke it then because I don't remember. At the end of the day, we can either see the world, the universe, and everything in it. So our interactions, our the events that happen in our lives, we can either, and you and I have said this so many times on this podcast, as happening to us or happening for us. And if we experience life from the perspective that it's happening for us, which is where I say benevolent, or where I would use the word benevolent, then everything that happens in our lives is designed to help us actualize help us come back into alignment with who we are, help us come home to remember who we are. If, however, we hold the perspective that the universe is out to get us, or that the events that happen in our lives we are victims to, the world looks like a pretty hard place. And it doesn't give us a whole lot of agency, and it doesn't give us a whole lot of power. And I'm not talking about the kind of power over. I'm talking about inherent power, the kind of power that has us connect to something bigger than we are, not just our own little selves walking through the world. And so I guess it's a really long way of saying what I mean by benevolent is the universe. It's funny. I feel like I've lost my words today. Just give me half a second.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, our perspective on life is all we've got. And if our perspective is that every experience that we have is designed to help us grow into the person that we are meant to become, then this whole wild ride becomes an adventure. If, however, we think that what's being presented to us, whether it's an accident, it's an illness, it's, losing something, it's a job that we acquire or a job that we lose, events that are happening with our kids that we really don't have a lot of control over. If we assume that there's no relevance to that, or that the universe is out to get us and poor me or woe is me, then our lives become very painful. And actually, our lives become one huge reaction. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And it's interesting, what showed up for me there's a little bit of like at least how we're opening with it. It's a bit of a Pascal's wager. And what that is this, have
I
you heard
have
of this
no
one before?
idea what that
Okay,
means.
yeah, yeah.
No.
So it's this famous thing when it came to the existence of God. And Pascal was a famous French mathematician in the 17th century, and philosopher who just said, listen, put it this way. Um, if you believe in it, if you believe in an infinite God, and infinite God exists, then there's lots of upside. If you believe in an infinite God, it doesn't exist, there's probably no downside. But if you don't believe in an infinite God and it does exist, that's going to be problematic. So you're just way better off when you look at the probability of outcomes to just be a believer, because there's really no downside in it. There's lots of downside in not believing and not living your life that way. And what I'm hearing within this is there's a there's a positioning and a framing and perspective of life that you're just going to be better off regardless if you position yourself for a benevolent universe, whether it's true or not.
I think that's absolutely true. Yeah, I
Now,
think that's absolutely true. And I know it, I know it to be true in my everyday.
yeah,
What does it mean to you to live in a benevolent universe?
it's interesting because I think when I first went down this road, it was very much how he described it in this Pascal wager. It's like I think I'm better off just believing that. And I'm better off framing things as they're happening for me, that everything's an opportunity. Everything has a reason in it. And if I can just position that way, I'm going to have more inner peace and happiness, and I'll learn more lessons. And that's unequivocally true. I believe that's a better way to live life. But it means much more to me than that now. It's like my lived experience here now is, I'll unequivocally say I know the universe is benevolent. My own personal experience tells you unequivocally, I know I live in a benevolent universe. And the creative intelligence that runs through this universe is benevolent and kind. And in my view, it's the frequency of love. That's what I experience on a daily basis now, far beyond the intellectual exercise that I went through originally. And I don't know if I need to do the first to get to the second, but that's how I experience it.
Well, I have two questions from that statement. Actually a comment first, which is, when you just described the the beginning of that piece, what I would say is it actually sounds a little bit fluffy. It sounds a little bit, in some ways, it could even sound like bypassing, right? Like everything that happens is for me. Everything is an opportunity to grow. It's all wonderful. And it's not all wonderful.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always feel like an opportunity to grow. A lot of this feels really painful. And I say that because when we're not talking about airy fairy shit here, guys. We're
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about like really getting into the trenches and being in the present moment with what life gives us or gifts us. And we'll get into that a little bit more after. But the second piece that you spoke to, which I find really interesting, is it's not very often that you use the words I know. You really approach life with a tremendous amount of curiosity. And you often speak to not knowing
Mhm.
and to holding the position of not knowing. What about this is so different for you? How do you know?
I feel like I want to address the first thing you said first, which is, yeah, and you're totally right that the starting point is the fluffiness. It is spiritual bypassing. But I've come to wonder if that's part of the step in this is it's fake it till you make it, but you got to believe it. And that was the starting point. So yeah, 100% spiritual bypassing until it's not, which gets me to the second question.
But before you go there, fake it till you make it, but you've got to believe it. I
Yeah,
don't think you actually get to the place of believing it until you've faked it for a while, right?
probably
Like,
true. Yeah.
yeah, it takes time to get to the place where you can truly believe it. And I think that that's what you're speaking to, this place of knowing. You know
Yes.
it because why? How do you know it?
So that's the inner voice, the inner dweller that I connect to now. It's like we talked to our last podcast on intuition, and it's that place inside when I turn all the outside noise off and come inside and then connect with what I'll call God consciousness or Christ consciousness or love consciousness. That's what I experience. That's the knowing that shows up. That's the that's the voice or the positionality that I connect with. And it's
Okay,
always the same.
so I'm going to dumb this down a little bit.
Please.
Um, can you give our listeners examples of how you know this to be true? How do you know through your own life experience or through the experience of your clients or the men that you work with that we live in a benevolent universe?
I've never seen a situation or happening arise that didn't lead to a place of ultimately the answer was love. That ultimately the answer wasn't to move to position yourself to a place of love, which is the flow and the frequency of the universe. I'm struggling here because it's an ineffable concept to explain.
Can I try?
Yeah, please try.
We'll see if you come back to it because you keep bringing us back to this ineffable
Mhm.
piece.
Mhm.
And I actually want to make this just really raw and real.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's keep working at it.
Okay. So, in the work that I do, in in my life as a mom, in my life as a friend, as a wife, as a daughter, and as a sister, um, more and more I am aware that there are two ways to respond to what's happening. One is to jump into drama. Um, and for me, in my experience, what drama looks like is resistance to what's happening. Um, Stories about why what's happening isn't okay. stories about why what somebody's doing isn't okay, stories about how where our kids are at, where our work is at, where life is at, where that's not okay. And the more I watch both myself and the people in my world, the more I recognize that that is a recipe for insanity. Because what is in this moment, what is showing up in our lives, is showing up in our lives. And if we meet it with resistance, the only thing that we have is struggle and suffering. If we meet it with curiosity around, what do I have to learn here? What is this experience trying to teach me? Not about another person, but about myself. What is it that's triggering me? What is it that I'm reacting to? And I can actually meet it with curiosity because I believe the idea that the universe is benevolent, which means to me that every experience that happens in my life, as we say in our opener, is an opportunity to grow if I take it. Drama starts to disappear. Freedom starts to show up. And I'll use a specific example of what I've been working on lately in relation to our kids. Like, we have 2 kids in our house, one that's going to university, one that's going to begin university in the fall, and one that's in high school. And each one of them are showing up with their own stuff. The more I am able to watch my interactions with them and see their struggle or their suffering, frustration, upset, sadness, fear, and I'm able to ask the question of myself, what's in this for me? And it's an interesting comment because that actually makes this sound like the whole world is about me and I'm selfish. And I guess in some ways what I'm saying is that's exactly the way
Yeah.
I
Well, you're
want
saying
to.
the universe, your whole universe actually is inside you, which is true.
Thank you.
This is truth.
Um,
Yeah.
what I'm saying
Yeah.
is each one of each one of these kids is going to live their lives. Each one of them has their own lessons to learn.
Yes.
But in my interactions with each one of them, I have something to learn too. And if, rather than looking at the kids just as an example and saying, oh, I can't believe we have to deal with this again, or why isn't this one, why hasn't this one figured this out yet? Or why is this one struggling? And I can actually stop and go, what is it about this struggle? Or what is it about this impasse that's impacting me? Where am I getting triggered? And how is this experience delivered to me for me to grow? All of a sudden, I've entered this giant field of possibility. And from that standpoint, I can hold a growth mindset. From that standpoint, I can look at each of these experiences, and rather than looking at them as something that's happening to me, I can see them as something that's happening for me. And when I can get to a place where I can really own that, where I'm not trying to control the kids' lives in any way, where I'm actually just working at managing my own responses to what's happening, a level of peace comes over me, which then gives me capacity to be able to meet each person in my life with curiosity and create a space that allows them to see themselves in a different way. But when I'm in reaction, and the reaction comes from, why me? Why is this happening? This isn't the way it's supposed to be. Life shouldn't be showing up this way. Everything gets really chaotic and messy.
Yeah. So you're suggesting in this experience you're sharing, it's that all these things that happen, using your children as our children as an example, all these things that are happening that seem like struggle or suffering or pain or at the time, it's benevolence because it's actually there for the benefit of both you and the kids.
Yep.
It's just a matter of seeing it that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I can't control whether or not the people in my world see it that way. The only thing I can actually manage is whether or not I choose to see it that way.
And you know that it makes total sense, and it's helped me get clarity on the question you asked me. And you know, it's funny. When you asked it, I went to thinking about specific client examples, but that's their experience. As you said, you have your experience. I only have mine, and so I'll certainly answer from my perspective. And again, it started for me. It was like I'm very much someone who I don't know if I thought the world was hostile, but I certainly thought the world needed to be controlled. At the very minimal, I thought it was, you know, it was neutral and that things would only happen that were good in my life if I made it happen. Until I got to a place where my actions of trying to control things didn't work very well anymore. And I had to get out of my own way and fully surrender. And my first instance of surrender, it was to alcoholism and addiction. Nothing I could do in my own power could solve that anymore. So I surrendered to the universe to like, if I just get out of my own way, what will happen? And sure enough, as soon as I did that, um, everything started to change in that front rapidly and miraculously. And in that place, I really started to feel into this idea of surrender to the universe as being benevolent, or just surrendering to the universe in general. I hadn't really thought about whether it was benevolent or not, but I certainly knew what I was doing was pushing me in the wrong direction. So I went to this place. If I've surrendered here when it comes to this alcoholism, what if I surrender in this place where it comes to relationship? Ah, interestingly enough, things started getting materially better. What if I surrender in terms of career, conflict, going through a divorce proceeding, going through legal troubles? What if I keep surrendering and move to a place of powerlessness in each one of these categories? And sure enough, one by one, with 100% success rate, my life started getting better in ways that I can't explain. It was miraculous. And what I realized I was doing is by moving to this place of powerlessness, not pushing the river, but going with the flow of the river, it kept taking me to a place of peace, happiness, and joy that I didn't know was possible. And that's my experience. It's like, wait, if I just jump into this river of what I call the universe and stop fighting it, it's benevolent. It's trying to take me to the place I'm yearning for. And all I need to do is stop fighting it everywhere. I stop fighting anyone or anything because my problems, I realize, were all of my own making.
Yeah.
Not the universe.
Beautiful. Okay, it's interesting. You know, you and I talk about this all the time,
Yeah.
and it's so much a part of our makeup now that it's funny to watch us struggle having a conversation about it because it seems like the thing that would actually flow off of our tongues most easily.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that's about, but I think it does speak a little bit to this idea of how ineffable this concept really is. And until you experience it, it's really hard to know it.
Yeah, there's a saying with ineffable concepts, whether it's this one or it's God or something else, is if someone's experience, you can say two words and they nod with agreement. And there's no number of words that can explain it to someone who may not have experienced. And so it's somewhere in the middle with us and our audience about, you know, how do we get this concept across for various different levels of experience?
Can you think of a specific example where we can highlight what we mean by this? Even one that's recent for us?
Hmm. In our
Sure.
do you
In
mean
our
do you mean the benevolence of the universe, like specifically, or a specific example where stop fighting it?
well, it's all the same, right? If we believe that we live in a benevolent universe, if you truly adopt that belief system and it becomes the lens through which you see the world, then each experience that you have is an opportunity for you to surrender. And through that surrender, each opportunity is an opportunity for you to step into flow. So, in any way that you want to describe it, I mean, I can think of a billion, but
No, go for one.
Okay, so I'm going to leave names and things out of it because I don't think that that's important. But I had a couple weeks ago, I had an opportunity to be able to I've had a conversation with one of our kids repeatedly, where a pattern showed up. And that pattern was very much a lens of experiencing the world not as benevolent, but actually experiencing the world through his eyes as was out to get him. Never being met fully with what he needed. Never having his needs met. And as I was sort of sitting with that, I watched myself wanting to meet all of his needs, to make him feel super loved, to fill a hole that wasn't mine to fill. And I recognized that. And so I just sort of stepped back. And as I was in this place of witnessing it, I had an opportunity to go for a walk with somebody very dear to me who's also family, in the generation that came before me. And I heard the same kind of conversation going on. There was a similar story that was being told. And it struck me in a really loud way. And then I came home and I recognized that that same story exists in my generation with my siblings. And I sort of sat quietly, gobsmacked, in recognizing that depending on the lens through which we see the world, our world looks entirely different. We could have 3 people growing up in the same household, 3 kids growing up in the same house, and their lens would completely define what they experienced. And I watched as I got to see this movie play itself out in 3 generations of family before my eyes. And as I watched that, what I recognized was that the learning in it, there's learning in it for each of them, I'm sure. That's not my business. The learning in it for me was so profound because what I got from it was I have absolutely no control over the lens through which somebody sees the world. There's nothing I can do about that. The only thing that I can do is choose the lens through which I see the world. And as soon as I got that lesson, something shifted for me in my own nervous system that created a level of calmness and peace and quiet that I'm not sure that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. And it shifted the way that I was able to interact with each of those characters in my world, to be able to meet them in a place of complete calm, so that perhaps their story the lens through which they see the world could potentially also shift. I don't know if I described that very well. I'm really struggling with my words today.
Well, it's hard. And then you describe again, you as soon as you realize you're in conflict with what is, and put your and switch your perspective and put yourself to a place where now you're going with the flow of it all, everything starts to change. The way you see it, the way you interact, all that thing. And that's it's almost just like it's not can't specifically prove the universe is benevolent. All you can say is when I orient myself that way, or you orient yourself that way, it works out.
Yeah.
That's the closest we can come to touching it. I can just describe what happens when I treat it as it's benevolent. I can't prove it's benevolent. But every time I take the action and align myself that way, my life gets materially better.
You just summarized that really beautifully. So thanks for finding words for me. And with that, I think we'll take a break and we'll come back.
Sounds good. Collect ourselves here.
Yeah.
Parents, do you have questions about navigating the journey of parenthood? Be Your Influence is the best place to find answers and guidance to help you become the parent you want to be. Focusing on the transformative power of emotions, energy, and empowerment, often overlooked yet essential for thriving families, my programs equip both parents and young people to master what they can control. Get your free guide, A Parent's Guide to Understanding and Addressing Bullying, at beyourinfluence.com.
Cut the shit. Stop struggling to feel present. Stop being taken advantage of. Express how you feel and stop making choices based on what other people think. Intuition Unleashed, a revolution in personal liberation podcast, is your go-to resource for combining guidance with mental health and spirituality and solving your questions about why you can't seem to catch a break and find your true happiness. And you can find more episodes at becknelson.com/podcast.
Tune in to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living, with me, Jacqueline.
And me, Chris, on Transformation Talk Radio, every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and to heal, and how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Witness the field of potential that arises when you take personal responsibility and become the divine creator in your own life.
Visit theway-healing.com for more information.
Hey everybody, oh my goodness, we have got talk radio for all of it.
Really, thank you for blazing the trail for women in talk radio and just being such an inspiration to me and so many other people. What you're doing is so awesome. And, you know, without people like you there to like really step out of the box and go for it, I don't know if someone like me would have ever ended up here, but I'm so happy to be here. And I just want to thank you for everything you're doing. You're one of my major inspirations.
What if your training isn't enough? The Multicultural Mindset Podcast invites counselors and therapists to unlearn the one-size-fits-all approach. This isn't cultural competence. It's a way of being that brings racialized experiences from the margins to the very center of care. Let's stop pathologizing Black pain and start challenging the system that created the body.
Living a
Parents, do you have questions?
Cut the shit. Stop struggling.
And we're back. Jack and I were just laughing over the break about how it's challenging to articulate some of this type of concept, which we freely talk about in our own, but there's lots of shortcuts in it. But we're gonna soldier on for the second half here. I'm gonna shift the direction a little bit. Maybe this will be simpler. I want to name the obvious objection about what we're saying in a benevolent universe. If you look at the news, look at real suffering, how does anyone hold the benevolent universe with a straight face in the face of that? I mean, that's going to be the pushback, and that's the pushback I get all the time.
We'll see if I can find my words in the second half of this show. I think the way that I would respond to that, and I totally understand the objection, actually. But I would say that what's happening in the world, from my perspective, is a really incredible reflection of what's happening within our minds. And the warring that's going on inside of all of us, the need to be right, the need to be on top, the ego structures that we work with that are, helping us stay in survival, not helping us to thrive, but helping us to survive. That's what's being reflected to us in the world outside. And I would suggest that the insanity of the world itself is actually an incredible way to pause. It's asking us to pause and ask ourselves who we want to be and who we choose to be in any moment in every interaction. Because we're seeing a stage play itself out with actors who are only in resistance to what is, who are all working from the perspective of their egos. And as we watch it, what we see is absolute destruction. And so I would say the world is a perfect example, or it's a perfect opportunity to draw us back to center, to ask the question, who do I choose to be in every interaction that I have? And I would say it's actually like, we've talked before about the soul whispers and then it gets louder and it gets louder. This is as loud as it gets, right? We're living in a world that is fraught with disease. Mental health is at all-time lows. We're looking at an epidemic of loneliness. All of what's going on in the world for us is simply, from my perspective, an opportunity to call us home. If I focus again out there in what's happening, I'm going to get lost in the news. I'm going to get lost in this idea of this one's right and this one's wrong. This group is right, this group is wrong. But if I watch the news and I recognize how it makes me feel, and I come back to what's happening for me in it, where I'm getting triggered in it, then I actually get to work with that. And I shift my consciousness. And in shifting my consciousness, I then create room for others to do the same.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I was really listening to the word ego really showed up for me. But even before I jump into that, it's almost like I had this thought. It's like, given the news and all that's going on and all these negative things we see, it almost reaffirms my view that the universe is benevolent because despite that, our humanity and everything, creation still pushes forward. It pushes forward in the face of all that, all these forces that seem to be almost intent on destroying it, yet it can't. All these things that happen, our creation still moves forward in a beautiful way objectively. But I think that idea of the universe is benevolent and we're souls that are connected to the universe, we're all one consciousness is the way I see it. The ego is not benevolent. That's something that's clear because our ego, we talk about, it's a survival strategy. It's a survival mechanism and it's predicated on control. It's predicated on power. But more importantly, the ego uses ignorance as a survival strategy. It wants to be ignorant. It wants to think it knows everything. It wants to shut out things it doesn't know. And that ignorance is the source of majority of evil in our world right now. And the more ego there is, the more there's people pushing against the river. And fortunately or unfortunately, the people that have taken power or are given the keys to power in our universe are those with the biggest egos. And they're those with the greatest amount of ignorance and lack of understanding of how the universe actually works. So you have this benevolent current with a whole bunch of ignorance pushing against it and making it look like it's not allowing it to flow the way it wants to, but it continues to flow. And of course, our own egos get in the way as well, mine included, where we're watching the news, we're watching these events, and again, objectively, it's 0.5% of what's actually going on. And we're pulling it up and staring at it saying, oh my God, look at all the awful things that are happening. I look around this room right now, there's nothing awful happening here. Everything's wonderful right now. I look outside, everything's wonderful. This is some psychological fear that I'm making a story of pain about that's happening around the other side of the world. I'm not just saying it's real or not real. I don't actually know. But my lived experience every day, if I'm really objectively truthful about it, is a miracle. It's not bad. It's not suffering. It's benevolent. it's kind.
So it's interesting. I'm hearing something really curious, which is that in listening to the news, in paying attention to social media, in watching the violence that happens when sides are chosen, when there is a right and there is a wrong, and there is a good and there is a bad, what it actually does is totally draw us out of ourselves. And it brings us to a place where we no longer have access to our intuition. We no longer have access to our inherent power. We get caught up in the chaos of the dramas. And the dramas, as I see them, are actually intended to bring us back inside. But instead, we are being pulled outside.
Correct.
And you said something on the break, which is, it's funny for me that it was you that said it and not me, because it's so much of my world growing up, is you spoke to nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
You spoke to this idea that if you look outside, or you go into the forest, or you go to the ocean, or you go wherever, nature is still finding a way to move through its cycles, to grow, to prosper, to die, to be reborn. And it's consistent. It's consistently showing us how to operate in this world. You go and you sit with a tree for 10 minutes. The tree is not buying into the drama that's happening in the world. The tree's present to the water that is feeding it, to the sunshine that's helping it to grow. And it's not getting caught up in everybody's dramas that's walking through the forest. It's just being.
I would even say, yeah, I would even say it's more than that. If you go into, like, it organizes itself along the lines of what I would call benevolence. If you take a close look next time you go into the forest, look at the trees that have grown on slight angles or slightly crooked to maximize the amount of canopy. And they can only do that because the other trees have already communicated to them where they need to grow to get the sunlight. Watch how the forest floor conspires to create the right amount of networks to connect all the trees and all the fauna in there. Notice how animals create the proper amount of territory so they can all coexist and maximize their survival. This is the evidence of benevolent universe. What gets in the way is the human ego, which, again, it's not benevolent. It's a survival mechanism that relies on ignorance, which is evil. And that's this piece that becomes our lived reality, pushing us away from all we have to do is let go of it, move to this place of minimizing our ego, not get caught up in the drama, and go with the flow of it all, just like the rest of nature does. And we get pulled so far away from that.
So if you come back to your question around how can you say that we live in a benevolent universe when you look at all the cruelty going on in the world, the answer that you actually just spoke really beautifully is that the universe itself is benevolent. The creative intelligence that exists is consistently showing us the benevolence of the universe. What's not benevolent is our drive to survive in such a way that we're operating consistently out of fear rather than surrendering to what is.
Yes. Yeah. And that fear manifests itself away in control and power and all sorts of different tactics. That's not living in the frequency of the universe, which is a higher frequency of love or peace or whatever you want it to be, but it's not fear. Because fear is not benevolence.
You spoke that really well, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. But I want to come back to what you said, because you've sort of answered the next question, like, what do we do about it? Right. And then you jump and you answer it. All you can control is how you relate to the universe, how you perceive the universe. As soon as you try to get everyone else to, like, get in line with how they're supposed to see it, you're back into the ego, you're back into control, you're back into ignorance, you're in all these things. All we really have this locus of control is I'm going to choose to try to align myself with this frequency of the universe, which is inherently good. And I'm going to move to a place of trusting and allowing.
And so with that, let's bring up the idea of soul contracts.
Yes.
Because I think that that really speaks to what you're talking about. So inevitably, and I'm sure many of you on this call have had these experiences of having tough experiences with people that have come into your life. As I said earlier, we really do have, I'm sure there are many options. I'm going to give you the two sort of pools of those options. The people that have come into your life have come into your life to hurt you, or they've come into your life to help serve your evolution. And I really hold strongly to this idea that we've created soul contracts prior to coming into this lifetime with people. And whether you believe that or not doesn't really matter. You get to hold whatever belief you want, but I'll tell you how that plays out in my world. And you can try it on for size if it works for you, and if it doesn't, you can let it go. Particularly in tough interactions, I notice that I can move into a place of blame, shame, defend, attack. And when I do that, I totally lose my ground. I'm definitely not a tree that's rooted in the earth. I'm somewhere else. And my reactivity and my nervous system goes into overdrive. But I can also come at things in a very different way. When I meet something that feels painful, where I feel struggle, where I feel like somebody is doing me wrong in quotations, I can come to a place of the witness, and I can observe what's happening inside of me in my thinking and the sensations in my body. And the thoughts and the sensations themselves are like doors that open up possibility. And those doors, those sensations can actually be an invitation to calm down a little bit, to find a way to breathe, to calm my nervous system, and ask the question, what's actually wanting to happen here? And what I've come to in many different circumstances is this idea that people come into our lives to serve us, to serve our evolution, to help us find our way through our blind spots. And we can either choose to surrender to that and come into what's the lesson in this for me, or we can start getting involved in everybody's business. And most of us spend our lives getting involved in everybody's business. It doesn't create peace. It creates a tremendous amount of conflict and upset. And it leaves us in a place that's very similar to countries battling, to governments battling. But if in those moments I can assume that this person is actually here for me, we chose to come together in this lifetime to work through this piece of work, and that they're opening a door for me to be able to see where I have a blind spot, then something entirely different happens. And when I've learned the lesson that I need to learn, the struggle stops.
And what's left?
Peace.
Yeah.
Ease. And actually a capacity to unconditionally love
Yes.
the person that brought the lesson in the first place.
Yeah.
But what's required of us in those moments is everything. Because each of these people that come into our lives gives us an opportunity to face our egos, to see where the ego wants to show up and win a battle. I love, yeah, it reminds me of Rumi's quote, which I will bastardize as I do everything I try and quote. But the idea of there's a play, do you remember it? There's beyond, I can't believe my words are really gone today. Beyond the place of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field. I'll
Yes.
meet you.
Yeah.
And that field is the field of creative intelligence. That field is a place that exists beyond the ego. And that field is without question, in my experience, benevolent.
Yeah.
And it's flow. And as soon as you enter that space, life changes entirely. But to get there, you have to be willing to die. And what I mean by that is you have to be willing to let the ego die so that what's underneath can fully thrive.
Yeah. And you're, and everything you said in there, like I relate to, and the way you describe soul contracts, the mechanics of it get me to the same place, and I relate to it just slightly differently, and it's almost where you ended with the field, um, more so than a sort of the idea of like, we go somewhere, we come back with the contract. Is I more relate to it is that we are just simply one unified field of consciousness. And we're these individuated sparks of consciousness that just are feeling separated from the whole by the ego structure. But everything is absolutely interrelated and it's just one. There's no separation between the observer and the observed in this. There's no actual real separation between me and you right here. It's just a perception issue from our ego. But we're fully connected, as we are with every other human being and every other source of conscious and living creature that exists out there. Everything's all happening in unison as it's meant to. There's nothing out of place here. Everything is going exactly as it's being orchestrated by this central creative benevolent intelligence. And it is only our ego that are trying to create separation, that are locked in fear, that are trying to have a scarcity view that I have to protect myself or I'm going to lose out and someone's going to get something different, not recognizing we're all just one consciousness. And as soon as I relate it to that way and feel into this one consciousness, which is the quantum, otherwise known as the quantum field, I can just relax into it. No one's trying to get me. There's nothing bad happening. There's nothing good happening. It's just all happening in a benevolent way. And my only job here, the only thing I need to do is experience it. And the best way to experience that is one without suffering, right? Not trying to fight it, but just going with the flow of it. I'm just here to experience life. That's it. There's nothing more I actually need to do. And any place that I'm suffering or creating anxiety or this is coming up, it's just an opportunity for me to like take a closer look at that and dissolve it, which helps me let go of my ego structure. So I can just be connected to this one field of benevolent creative intelligence that we call the quantum field.
So it's funny, I'm listening to you speak, and there's a part of me that hears you so completely that my whole body just got really quiet. And so I would say, I know that what you're speaking is absolute truth. And I'm still wrapping my mind around understanding the quantum field.
There's a famous Einstein quote, and I think this really is his quote. I mean, they all get attributed to him because all quantum physicists who've seen the field and understand the mechanics of our universe, they know it's not real. They know we're looking at an illusion. And he goes, I know. And what did he say? He goes, I know it's an illusion, but it's very convincing. And that's the challenge. Again, like you get pulled in and out. It's not like I'm walking around in this sort of like warm blanket of oneness. It's like I'm reacting and getting thrown off course and getting knocked off the beam 50,000 times a day. But I'm getting better at coming back to this. Stop getting into the drama of this. Stop this idea that you're separate. And remember, every time you move yourself to a place of powerlessness and just diving into the river and going for it, it works out. And little by little, day by day, hour by hour, life just gets a little bit easier. And I can reside in that place of peace a little bit longer each day. But it's a lifelong work.
It absolutely is. But you said something really important there that I want to qualify before we end the show, which is that every moment that we step into struggle and suffering is an opportunity for us to come back to peace. Every moment that we get lost in our suffering and struggle is an invitation to come back to a place of ease. We're not meant to live in that place of struggle. That struggle is simply a reminder to come home. But when our focus is so much out there, we think we're meant to control that. All we're actually being asked to manage is what's happening in here. And choosing peace, choosing ease is the gift that we have in every moment.
Yeah. And I think really important thing, and it's choosing peace is different than comfort. And I think that's the thing a lot of people get tripped up on. Oh, I'm trying to orient my life to be comfortable. That's not the same as orienting to peace. Peace is I am at ease, I'm at peace, and I'm accepting whatever the circumstances are. I'm at peace with them all the time. I don't need them to be a certain way. As soon as I need something to be a certain way, as soon as there's a good way and a bad way, I am no longer at peace. And so peace is a state of mind. It's a frequency of consciousness where I'm in full acceptance, more than full acceptance of what is.
I'm in full acceptance of what is. And peace actually requires, it demands us to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's even a better way. Beautiful. I got shivers there. Beautiful. Yeah. There's a tremendous amount of discomfort in peace.
Because peace, the discomfort comes from we have to face ourselves.
Yeah.
That's where it's not pretty, right? Like that's where this work is not, there's no bypassing in this work. There's actually facing yourself, like coming face to face with where you're getting in your own way.
Yeah, and if you're going along with the current of society, which is leading us to have achievement, possessions, title, all this stuff, that is not the road to peace. You're on the wrong path, and that's what makes it so hard.
Because what we're saying is that in order to be able to go with the flow, you actually have to go against the grain.
That's really just uncomfortable.
I don't think there's anything more uncomfortable, actually. Yeah.
That's
All
a great
right.
place to stop. Okay, I think we pulled it together in the second half.
Maybe, but maybe if we take this, maybe we try again next time.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we hope that at least we sparked some thinking for you. And you know how to reach us if you have any questions.
Till
Have
next
a
time.
beautiful day, everybody. Take
Bye.
care.
You've been listening to me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, on Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living.
Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and the masculine, you will learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow, and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
For more information or to connect with us personally, visit theway-healing.com. That's theway-healing.com.